Fox College football analyst Joel Klatt is presented each week by MyBookie.ag. Use code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. That's MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. All Saturday, I thought back to this summer when Klatt was explaining to us how the games were picked by Fox, and we're like, how do you not pick Oregon and Ohio State first? And Klatt's like, I asked the same question.
Yeah.
And they told me, that Ohio State Penn State game's going to be the Saturday before the election, and we'll be able to get all the political advertising and the Fox election commercials. It was barely noticeable, Joe. Barely noticeable.
I wish they'd have spent more money on a variety of ads.
Yeah, barely noticeable that it was the Saturday before the election. Couldn't tell at all.
I was trying to watch NFL games yesterday.
Oh, my. It was worse.
I could almost not watch. I was just like, oh, my gosh, can we just stop?
I said it. I'm one half away from knowing where every individual factory worker is going to vote. If I could just get one more half of football, I'll know where every factory worker in Pennsylvania is voting.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's amazing.
Oh, man.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I thought that was a great day. I love all these top 5 matchups. This has been so good for college football, guys. I think this season is a breath of fresh air in our sport. There's more teams, fan bases really engaged as the playoff expanded. Because of conference realignment, we've had more top 5 matchups, and I'm here for it. I thought Saturday was awesome.
I said earlier, it's almost like the NFL is more predictable right now than the college game. When you look at Baltimore, you look at Detroit. Those teams seem like elite teams, and week in, week out, it seems like there's a flaw with a different team out there. And coming into this game, Ohio State, it was Josh Simmons at left tackle, patchwork offensive line. You pointed this out multiple times on the broadcast. But Ohio State's defense, and I brought this up last week, and I brought it up again today. Since 2022, only 2 teams have gone over 17 points on this defense, Michigan and Oregon this year. This defense, nobody talks about them, Klatt, but this defense is what will win them a championship if, in fact, they win a championship.
Yeah, 2 straight years, 8 quarters of football, Penn State has not scored really an offensive touchdown. Their touchdown last season was last 30 seconds of kind of garbage time. This season, it was a pick 6. So, I get it. Penn State fans are going to feel like, we let one get away. We had the ball inside the 5 twice. And that's true. And at the same time, that offense hasn't really scored a touchdown in 2 years. And so your point about the defense is good. And I would go back. I remember doing the spring game in Columbus and watching that defense and studying before the year. And I really thought that Ohio State had the chance to be the best defense in the country. I thought Georgia was certainly in that conversation as well. And nothing has changed, outside of really, when you think about it, like a couple of bad quarters for Ohio State with explosive plays against Oregon and a couple of bad quarters for Georgia with explosive plays against Alabama. Other than that, those 2 defenses really have played outstanding football this year. And I think Oregon plays solid defense as well. Tennessee plays solid defense. But those 2 specifically, I think are probably just a notch above. And I thought Saturday was evidence of that. Ohio State played great on defense and just totally took away what Penn State had to do in order to win. They had to establish Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in the run game, and they had to get the ball to Tyler Warren. They couldn't do either of those things. Basically, Penn State's offense was Drew Aller scrambling or snap it to Tyler Warren.
Yep.
That was really it.
And that's what I want to get to, Joel, because you talk to these coaches all the time, and I would imagine you've got a list of guys that you really respect that can really, I don't know which is the good one, seeing the trees for the forest or forest for the trees, whatever the good part of that saying is. You got some coaches that can do that, and then you have some coaches that can't. What goes through an offensive coordinator's mind when Tyler Warren is your, to me, best player on offense and you're first and goal inside the 5 and you run 4 plays and none of them seem to be designed for him at all? You walk away from that and you got to be going as a fan or Tyler Warren, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I think there are times, and I don't know the specific night that they work on goal line offense. In particular, I would call it like not just goal line, but like low red offense. Low red meaning like inside the 7-yard line, inside the 5-yard line. What are we doing, right? What are the formations that we're using? and what has worked against the opposition, what has not worked against the opposition, what are we good at. And so going into this game, when I studied the low red for Ohio State's defense and Penn State's offense, here what was abundantly clear. Abundantly clear. I have it in my notes, actually. Is like low red Ohio State. You cannot really run between the tackles. Oregon tried, failed, had to kick a field goal. That's the only reason that Ohio State had the ball late to go down and have a chance to win. You guys remember that. Yes. That's an inside the 5-yard line stop. They tried to go right downhill. Last week, Nebraska, 1st and goal, and so tried to go right downhill. Failed. 4th down stop. So there's 2 teams, and that's the last 2 games for Ohio State. And they failed going straight ahead. And so now the low red plan, this is what the low red plan is, to pull the starting guard from the lineup and put him at wide receiver and start motioning him around, put the backup guard in and run behind him.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm like, and listen, I lost sleep over my commentary during that section. I'm sure it was fine, and I talked about Warren and trying to get him the ball, but the best thing that I saw from Penn State in the low red all year, and I've watched every snap of these guys and both teams on the entire year, the best thing that they do is snap the ball to Warren down there, and they get kind of like the stretch read play. And then he's diving over the top. You've seen the highlights of that, whether it was the Illinois game or others. And we didn't see that. I'm dumbfounded. And here's the other part. I'm just going to expand a little bit on this further. Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, is at Penn State because specifically Mike Yurcich did not get the ball to the Stars against Ohio State last year. Remember, Penn State's offense was number 1 in the Big Ten statistically last year, and they fired their offensive coordinator. Why? Because they couldn't succeed against Ohio State. Why? Because they didn't target their best players. Allen and Singleton last year in the second half had 6 combined carries for 6 yards, and Franklin's like, no, I'm done watching Marvin Harrison go for 10 catches and 9 catches and all of them for first downs. So he's like, I need someone that's going to come in and take my best players and use them as the focal point. And so here we go with a new coordinator, and he's got all this creativity, and there's motions and there's shifts. And this is going to sound like a huge knock on Andy Kotelnicki, but he didn't do what the directive was. They had 5 snaps inside the 5-yard line on Saturday. 5, because 1 right before the half, and then the 4 right at the end of the game. All 5, not 1 target for Nick Singleton or Tyler Warren, whether it's handing it to him, snapping it to him, anything. And it blows my mind that was the plan. You talk about when Monday night and Tuesday night end up defeating you on Saturday. The plan and the low red zone was just not effective for Penn State, and that's obvious.
Joel Klatt is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. MyBookie.ag brings you Klatt. Code next round. They double your initial deposit at MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.ag.
By the way, speaking of MyBookie.ag,
you're red hot, by the way. Somebody told me you were 5-0 this weekend.
Another little 5-0.
I got
35-18 on the year
spread.
Against the spread.
Wow.
That's incredible.
One of my best friends from high school lives. One of my best friends from high school tipped me off on this. He lives in South Carolina now. And he's like, by the way, your boy Klatt is red hot against the spread. And I'm like, Klatt's picking against the spread? He's like, oh, yeah, on his podcast every week. And he goes, I've made a fortune off of him this year.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, he said you were 5-0 again this weekend, so good for you.
Yeah.
Now, the week he tipped me off on it, I think you went 1-4.
Yeah, that's right. Because when that happens, and I can tell you, the weeks that I'm like, oh man, I love these picks. It's just like 1-4 incoming, like you can't believe. And then the ones you're like, I don't know. These are tough lines. Bang, 5-0.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive. As you're leaving the game and you're walking through State College back to your parking, right there by Gus. What is the fan reaction like? I mean, Franklin was getting booed, and he got into this tiff with a student, which was a
yeah,
bad
it's
look.
like you can't do that.
No,
man.
you
Like,
cannot
just
do that.
Go to the locker room.
Yeah.
So the frustration wasn't that they lost; it's that they lost in the same way. Again, it's like we've seen this movie before. This is like watching Home Alone 2 after loving Home Alone. it's like it's basically the same movie, in a different scene. So there's two ways that Penn State has lost regular season games over the last few years. First of all, only to Michigan and Ohio State, right? Like that's the only teams that they lose to. They've risen. I will give James this and Penn State as a program. They don't lose to unranked teams. So like you don't get the A&M South Carolina type of result from Penn State where it's like, what was that? But in these games, they keep falling short, and the sentiment of the fan base is a frustrating one and a frustration because it's the same way. They lose in one of two ways, and this is it. They either get outskilled on the outside by Marvin Harrison Jr., right, and Ohio State, or they got out-physicaled and mauled by Michigan. It was one of the two because no one else could outskill them and no one else could out-maul them. And so it was just they had this lid on their ceiling, and it was that way. And here's the frustrating part. And I heard this in the rumblings. It's like, great. Now Ohio State can do to us what Michigan did to us because Ohio State didn't outskill them on Saturday. They mauled them. And they did it with a patchwork offensive line with guys starting for the first time in their career in these spots. And Hinsman at left guard and Donovan Jackson at left tackle. That was the frustration, was the 40 carries for 176 yards. The frustration is not only did we get beat that way, but again, we didn't give the ball to our stars. So there's this idea that, like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If we're just going to continue to make the same mistakes, then it's not going to happen. And there was, I think, a heightened sense of expectation going into yesterday's game because of the way that Ohio State was entering the contest. You could feel it amongst the fans as you're walking around. And then when we left, it was this sense of like, okay, we were totally wrong, and it's business as usual. And so the frustration was palpable.
As unpredictable as 2024 has been, the Big 12 takes it to another level. And we got it again this weekend with Iowa State going down to Texas Tech. We got it with Kansas State losing to a Houston team that is just awful. But
that one was like, what is going on?
The good news for you guys, being a Colorado fan and a former Colorado player, is things really open up now for Colorado in the Big 12. Yeah. And coming off this bye, if you had to guess right now, because I know you gave me the eye roll when I asked you last week if BYU was a national championship contender. They are now the only undefeated team of the Big 12. Do you think BYU is the team that you would say wins the Big 12, or Colorado, or somebody else?
They've certainly been the most consistent. There's no doubt. I'm trying, guys. I am trying so hard not to have the black and gold glasses on. But of the teams at the top of the Big 12, and now that's Colorado. They're in a third position in the Big 12. Who would you not want to play?
Colorado. They got the best quarterback.
Yeah,
and best
because
player in college
they've got
football.
the best players of anybody amongst those three. So I'm glad you at least agree with that sentiment, because to me, Colorado can lose any of their last four games. They can win any of their last four games. It's the same as anybody in the Big 12. BYU isn't a totally dominant team, although they have shown more width and the ability to win with defense, win with turnovers, win with offense, win with the ability to throw the ball, win with the ability to run the football. So I think that they're more balanced than anybody else. But I wouldn't want to see Colorado. No way. Now, they could go down and lose to Texas Tech. There's no doubt. Because is it real? Yeah, I think it is on the defensive side, and I think that they can run the football a little bit, but you don't know, and they're still going to give up too much pressure. But I don't want to see that team with the speed on the outside, with probably the best quarterback in college football and probably the best player in college football. I just there's this big part of me that, and I think obviously, guys, I went to school there, but there's a big part of me that, like, I would be desperate to see, as a college football fan, Deion Sanders in a 60-minute Big 12 championship game for the right to go to the playoffs.
So fun.
Like, that would be incredible.
And then
right?
play it out where if they win that game, I'd love to see Colorado on the road at given SEC team just to see what it looked like in the playoffs, the first round. I mean, just to see what it looks like.
But if they win the game, they got to bye.
Oh, that's right. They
Yeah,
would have a
not
bye.
necessarily.
Unless Boise's in front of them.
The highest ranked,
Yeah,
the
right.
4 highest ranked champions, and there's
Could be
there'd be
Boise.
a good chance
Yeah.
that if that's Boise, that means Boise would have a bye. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, but isn't it great that that could happen? I mean, I'm glad we're to this.
Dude, I'm telling you, this expanded playoff, I love it.
Me too.
Now, it's an absolute kick in the teeth that we don't get to call any of the games, obviously, and that's above my pay grade. But what it's done for college football, I think, is it's immeasurably great. Think of all the fan bases that are still engaged, even just in the SEC, even in the Big Ten. Like, normally entering November, there's maybe 8 or 9 teams that were like, yeah, they could make it. And now there's 23, 24 teams that feel like they have a real path to the college football playoff. That's great for the sport. We got more fan engagement. We've got higher ratings than ever before. So everyone that wants to like whine and cry about the transfer portal, one, it's creating a little bit of parity because even all the 4 teams at the top that we would all consider to be the best 4 teams, they've shown some vulnerability along the way. Georgia turns it over too much. Oregon had trouble on the offensive line early in the year, and now Tez Johnson is injured. Ohio State struggled offensive line-wise against Nebraska. Texas went out there and their quarterback wasn't great. They lose at home. So like, I don't know, man. I just think this has been my favorite college football season that I can possibly remember.
I'm not surprised Texas A&M lost at South Carolina, but I thought if they lost, it was going to be 17-13. Something like that.
I know. Like, what happened? Yeah. South Carolina's offense hasn't shown that at all.
Yeah, and they did it running the ball, taking the Elko pressure out of it. And, I mean, they threw it well, too. Rocket Sanders was such a beast. With what's left in the SEC, you just talked about Georgia, and they got to go to Ole Miss, who's just lighting it up with Jackson Dart at quarterback. If you had to pick the SEC champion right now, who is it, Klatt? Who is your pick to win the SEC right now? You think Georgia can stick the landing?
I'm concerned for Georgia because if Beck plays poorly against a competent offense, watch out, right? Because they are playing with fire. I think you guys would agree with that.
11
interceptions in the last 5 games. Like, you can't do that. As great as their defense is. And, they've been doing that against teams that just can't take advantage because of how good they are on defense. But someone will be able to take advantage. Even the best defenses in college football at times get taken advantage of because of the rules and the skill on the outside. We've seen it with Ohio State against Oregon, and we saw it with Georgia against Alabama. I referenced both of those earlier. Well, if he goes out and throws 3 picks against Ole Miss might have a 3-touchdown lead. You give them a couple of short fields and you put your defense in a bad position, like, that's unsustainable. So do I think Georgia's the best team in the SEC? Yes, I do. Do I feel confident that they'll even get to the SEC championship game? Not really, because of that. And I think this weekend could be, man, that could be bad. I think that probably because of their schedule, they can lay low right now. I think Texas wins the SEC. But I don't know. Who would you guys pick? That's what I want to know.
I asked the question because I've got no clue. Because Beck is broken right now.
Yeah.
He's totally broken. Yeah. He's totally broken.
He's throwing into triple coverage.
Tennessee's broken throwing the football.
Well, Alabama is not playing well. Like, if you gave me A-plus Milroe against Georgia, if you gave me second half Beck minus the final throw against Alabama, it's just you're not getting the elite quarterback play in the SEC, so it just doesn't match up right now. Even yours is struggling.
Yeah, give me like yours second and third quarter against Oklahoma. Great. First quarter Oklahoma, first quarter Georgia. Nope. Like, that ain't gonna work. But by the way, this is not unique to the SEC, and not just quarterback play, but like, Ohio State's offensive line plays like they did against Nebraska, they'll get beat. Like, there's no doubt. So again, this goes to like there is no team that I feel confident can just win out, and is light years better than everybody else in our sport. And I do think that's a good thing. The SEC is an interesting one, though. I think that there's a lot of flawed teams, same as other conferences. And there's a lot of teams that I feel like at their best are elite teams. And there are a lot of them. Who wins? I'm not totally sure. I will say this about like an A&M. A&M is struggling with what everyone struggles with, which is it's really difficult to level up in college football. I always talk about this bell curve. You have a bell curve of performance that is kind of like at your repertoire, and you're generally going to sit in the middle, but then there's, you're going to have the outliers when you play poorly, and you're going to have the outliers when you play well. And what happens is that we'll see a team get into that right side of the bell curve of like the outliers of when they play well, and we think that's what that team is. And in reality, it's not. And until the fat part of the bell moves right, that's when a team really levels up. That's when a team becomes like Georgia and Oregon and Ohio State, and in some cases like Penn State, when they just don't lose the games to the unranked teams. A&M is not like that. They got emotionally ready for LSU and won, but it's not a program that was ready to level up and then take care of business week in and week out. So can they beat Texas? Well, yeah, because on the right side of their bell curve at home, they're elite. But the fat part isn't where it should be. So am I confident that they can go win the SEC? No. Am I confident that Tennessee can do that? No. Alabama? No. So I don't know who wins the SEC. I think that's a great question.
Because you were watching NFL yesterday, I'm going to ask you one NFL question.
Okay.
And this would have been a ridiculous question in the offseason, but moving forward, and look, they got beat by 31 yesterday, but Bo Nix, like the moment wasn't too big. That Baltimore, defense was swarming. They sacked him 4 times. But Bo's just one of these gutty guys. You've watched him plenty in college. But moving forward, would you rather have Bo Nix or Trevor Lawrence?
Can't believe this is a question.
Well, especially with the money Trevor got in the offseason. But I think it's a legitimate question.
I think it is, too.
I think it's probably Bo.
Yep.
I agree.
I mean, you've only seen him half a season, though. That's the only problem.
Part of this is that Bo is in a much better fit right now.
Perfect offense for him. Facilitate.
Yeah, it's a perfect offense for him. If he doesn't have Sean Payton, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But I don't know. I mean, if Carson Beck is broken, then Trevor's broken right now.
That's it.
And that organization. And guys, by the way, in professional sports, name an organization that its players can overcome its leadership and its ownership. Any sport. No. Name a bad owner that wins championships.
It doesn't happen.
Yep.
It doesn't happen. Bad GMs and bad owners. Yep,
you're right.
It does not happen. So we have all this focus all the time on coaches and players in the NFL, and Dak can't do this, and well, it's like, well, who's overcoming the chaos? At these organizations, who's overcoming Carolina's chaos and Jacksonville's chaos and Dallas's chaos, for that matter? Who's overcoming that? No one right now.
Yeah. When Jimmy ran the organization at Dallas, when Jerry Jones was the new owner, he let Jimmy call more football shots, and as it went on, he didn't call as many football shots. That's why Jimmy left. That's why the Cowboys have been where they are. That's my first take of the day right there.
I am convinced, though, that you have to be able to get it done with players under their first contract. Those guys have got to be significant. You've got to have. No,
that's wrong. It's because Mahomes is winning.
What? No, I was about to say
Brady won.
Unless you have a generational quarterback like you just named 3 of maybe Mount Rushmore.
Well, it's the probability is much higher to win at the top end if you have one of those guys than if you have a guy in their first contract. The teams that win because their roster is great, their defense is great, and their quarterback is in their first contract, that is a minuscule percentage. Minuscule. It's basically Seattle. Like, that's it. San Francisco can't get it done.
Well, I mean, the Bengals were there with Burrow. The Rams were there with Goff. They just didn't finish the deal.
I understand, but did they win?
No.
Mm-mm. No, because
who did they get beat by?
Well, Burrow got beat by maybe the most underrated quarterback in the history of the NFL, and Matt Stafford. Goff got beat by Tom Brady.
That's right. So who did Purdy get beat by? Mahomes.
Yeah.
Who did Goff get beat by? Brady. So I feel like the judge from My Cousin Vinny. It's like that was a well thought out objection. Overruled.
Yes.
Juicy.
Sorry.
Boy, you mocking me. Hey, before you go, I do want to ask you an Alabama LSU question. So, if you're Kalen DeBoer and you're Nick Sheridan, you watch obviously the second half of Texas A&M LSU and like, boy, mobile quarterback caused LSU fits. They had no answer.
100%.
So, I mean, but is the inclination to say as a coach, we got those plays, or all right, they're working on that all week. Let's take advantage of them over preparing for the mobile Jalen Milroe.
No, I think that's hunting for ghosts.
Okay.
You've got to, one, know what your strength is, and then two, prepare for what you've seen on film. If they adjust, then you can adjust. But you've got to go in with the focal point of your offensive game plan, similar to what it was early with Georgia, which is we need to create explosives because of our quarterback, where he is on the edge. He's got decisions whether he can run, whether he can throw. He's the most dynamic player on the field, just like really Marcel Reed was when he came in, right? I mean, Reed was a spark plug athletically. We all saw it. He was fast. He's moving around. Well, that's Jalen. I think you got to lean into that. You can't hunt ghosts and say, I think that they're going to fix that by the time we see him, so let's prepare a different way. I don't love that mindset.
All right, he is Joel Klatt, the Big Noon Kick this week.
Don't even stop. Just stop.
God, I just looked. Holy crap.
It's a good
it's a
virtual home game for you.
Holy crap.
No, that's Friday night.
Okay, Klatt, we always love him talking good college football here on the show. And he is presented by MyBookie.ag. I swear I just looked for the first time.
Do they take the big drum on the road? Does Purdue at least take the big drum on the road?
I can't believe you're showing that game.
Yeah, you don't really have a lot of options.
You don't, but holy crap. Had to be a better one than that, right?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. I'd rather have Michigan, Indiana. All right, Klatt with us each week. Curtis.
Well, that was the number one pick, but CBS got it. See, like our, we share in the Big Ten. We don't have the number one pick every week, so that's a rough one.
All right.
We've got a really high ceiling and a really low floor.
Yeah, absolutely do. We're seeing the floor this week. Klatt with us.
Never mind. I should stop.
You should.
Can't wait. I'll be in Columbus, guys.
Yes,
it's going to be awesome.
MyBookie.ag, code next round. When you sign on, code next round at MyBookie.ag to double your initial deposit. Thank you, Klatt. Have a great week.
You got it, guys. Have a good one, all right?
All right, buddy. We'll see you, Klatt, with us on the Johnston RVCenter.com hotline.